Okay, so this is an excerpt from the last story, and then we'll play the song that comes out of it. When the knock came, Donald didn't answer. Couldn't possibly have imagined that the banging was for him. He jumped a little when it continued, finally recognizing the knuckles making the noise were actually rapping on his door. "Criminy, that's my door," he said. "Ah, shit, the ferns." Certain the former tenants finally had come back for their plants. It had almost been a dozen years since the two guys had moved out, yet he still assumed it was one or both of them who was doing the knocking. "Out here," he hollered, getting up from the couch and starting toward the balcony. "They're out here, doing great, just a sec." But the voice that came back didn't sound like a former tenant's voice. No, the voice that came back wasn't what Donald had expected at all. It was a female's voice, a little shaky, it was quiet, it was sweet. It certainly made no mention of potted plants. "Donald?" That was what the lovely, shy voice said. Donald. He froze at the sound. Who could possibly know his name? Donald. There it was again. What could she want? And after what the woman said next, Donald fell right back onto the couch, hit the cushions hard. And were it easy to then fall right off a couch after collapsing onto it, Donald probably would have, might even have fallen right straight through the floor into the very earth below. "Donald, it's Lucy." His face flushed. He looked up at the ceiling. Donald didn't believe in God, but he prayed to that ceiling for strength, for anything. "Please, can you open up?" It didn't make sense. He didn't understand. He tried to stop it from registering. He gripped the ripped cushions beneath him. The longer the door stayed shut, the harder Lucy found it to remain out there. What had she been thinking coming unannounced? It wasn't fair. She hadn't seen him in more than 2 decades. She didn't know if he'd even want to see her. What could she expect? She turned her back to the door, but she did not leave. Staring at the hallway carpeting, she called again for Donald to at least come out into the hall. Donald heard every word, could hear her breathing. He was listening intensely, but he did not respond. He couldn't respond. He was trying desperately to grasp the situation, trying to determine who might be playing some cruel trick on him, trying to decide what he should do. Must be a lot of people named Lucy, he ultimately reasoned. This didn't have to be the Lucy. Far more Lucys out there who weren't the Lucy than the single Lucy who was. So he worked madly to develop a theory that made sense of it all. But even if the brain was willing, the heart wasn't. Donald couldn't hold back the truth. Lucy was less than 15 feet from him. After 20 years, and who knew how many miles, only a few sheets of laminated plywood suddenly stood between them. "Donald, I hear you in there. Come on, it's okay, open up." Donald eyed the fire escape, thought about making a break for it, but he couldn't move. He was completely paralyzed. He put his hand to his neck and his temples. They were on fire. He hadn't felt temples that hot since the bout of dengue fever he'd gotten in Mexico, and that had almost killed him. "Criminy," he whispered. Lucy was still knocking. "Not the best time," he finally said, his voice cracking. "I'm burning up in here." She didn't know what that meant. "Please," she said again, "I don't have anywhere else to go." At that, Donald broke. He gave in. He walked to the door, put his palm against the doorpost. "Christ, is it really you, Lucy?" "Yes, Dad, it's me." When he finally twisted the deadbolt and opened the door, Donald didn't know what to say or where to put his hands. He stuffed them in his pockets and forced a smile. He could not take his eyes off her. Lucy had short, streaked blonde hair cut roughly into bangs. Some of it had been dyed blue. She had freckles. She wore no makeup. A purple tank top half hid a bruise and a tattoo of some arabesque pattern. Her eyes were light brown, just like his. "Lucy," he whispered at last. They stood there in the doorway for far too long. Lucy carried a big backpack. She set it down, wondering if she should hug him or something. The hallway light was not flattering, and with his face unshaven, his hands still buried in his pockets, his eyes darting this way and that, he did not seem very huggable. She didn't seem too huggable either. She was all bones, her collarbones in particular. They were so sharp. She had dark circles under her eyes. She needed a shower. He looked at her wrists. They were so thin. He almost reached out to hold them, but stopped himself. "Your wrists," he finally said. "They're no bigger than a bird's." It was a strange thing to say after all that time, and she took it as an insult. He didn't mean it that way. She just looked so fragile. "That's not what I meant to say. Birds don't even have wrists." Of course that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is, criminy, I don't even know what I meant to say. What he meant to say was that those wrists looked just like he remembered she had when she was a little girl. He would hold her hand, rub his thumb across the back of one of them. She'd been only 3 when her mother left and took Lucy with her. 22 years it had been. He had not forgotten how little that hand felt in his. A fluorescent light bulb flickered down the hall. They were still standing awkwardly in the doorway. Donald was in no shape to become a dad, even to a grown woman. He wasn't prepared for that in the least. "Well," she said after a long while, "can I come in?" Father, 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 I am coming home. Open up the gates, please let me in. Everybody needs a way to start again. Yeah, I've been on a road not always kind. Yes, it's been a long, hard climb. Father, 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 lay your hand in mine. Sometimes all we carry holds us down, but letting go is hard, I've found. So let me be like the leaves on the trees. They come back in the spring, go to green. Or let me be like the stream full of rain. It comes back eventually to the sea. Comes back eventually to the sea. Tell me, will we ever reach the promised land? There's nothing we can do to change the past. Will we ever get to say we're free at last? Yeah, don't you know the war's over and done? I'm pretty sure more lost than won. So let me be like the leaves on the trees. They come back in the spring, go to green. Or let me be like the stream full of rain. It comes back eventually to the sea. It comes back eventually to the sea. Father, 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 I am coming home. Yeah, everybody needs a place to lead. Yeah, you and me both, it seems. So let me be like the leaves on the trees. They come back in the spring, go to green. Or let me be like the stream full of rain. It comes back eventually to the sea. Oh, I found my way back to you. Please find your way back to me. Oh, I found my way back to you. Please find your way back to me.
Father, Father, Father.